Welcome to the Fear and Greed Daily Interview. I'm Sean Aylmer. We've spoken a lot on this podcast about the tech boom in Australia. We have a terrific startup culture, as well as some more established players like Atlassian. But today, I wanted to take a broader look at whether technology is being embraced by the rest of the economy. Because if we don't digitise, we risk being left behind. The Australian Information Industry Association represents more than 300 companies covering many of the 750,000 Australian workers in information and communications technology. Ron Gauci has held senior roles in technology and communications companies ranging from Microsoft and IBM through to Telstra. He's now the Chief Executive of the AIIA and is my guest this morning. Ron, welcome to Fear and Greed.
Thank you, Sean. It's a pleasure.
So where do you start in your job? You're spearheading the tech industry's integration across all Australian industries. Where do you kick things off?
Yes, you're right. It is easy to get inundated with and distracted by the options, given how large the industry is and the impacts it's had on other industries. I guess the best focus is on other industries that are a priority for Australia with an eye to which ones then are growing. So the priority industries for us, as you know, are mining, agriculture, finance, biotech and sport being one of the up-and-comings. Then you've got environment, space, defence. They're all growing with a bullet as well. And then, of course, there's our technology industry. And to put it all in perspective, technology was our sixth largest industry by GDP 12 months ago. Today, it's the third largest with a bullet.
Wow.
And our technology impacts every other industry in this country. So if we learn how to commercialise things like AI and IoT and quantum and the likes and cybersecurity, for example, we can add in excess of 300 to 400 billion to our economy by 2030. And also the tech industry has its own ASX index. So that's an indication, I guess.
Okay, so let's look at a couple of the main sectors in a bit more detail, starting with health. We're ranked 26 out of 31 countries on the World Index of Healthcare Innovation. What do we do to change that?
Yeah, look, health is a great example. We can change it by taking a customer service-driven mindset, which is then powered by innovation technology that enables its execution. COVID has actually forced some of the much-needed changes. And for example, our everyday practices have changed. We've got telehealth being more widely used now and digital prescriptions, but we're a long way short of where some of the other more developed nations are with the centralisation of patient records. Regional practices, many practices don't even have PCs, let alone digitisation. And then there's the operational efficiencies. Early in the COVID cycle and even after I think the second or so lockdown, Vic government, the DHHS, was purchasing fax machines as a solution to our early tracking and tracing system.
Wow.
If you look at the British NHS system, for example, that's a great example of how we can work better. But more recently, if I can give you a more practical example, for reasons we don't need to go into on this call, I needed a surgery on my back, and it was critical surgery, and I spent a couple of weeks in hospital. To see the nurses doing my blood tests and my heart tests, blood pressure tests and the likes 3 or 4 times a day, and then having them handwrite things on pads and on their arms and that to then later transfer from the system to their hand to the computer is just totally inefficient and in fact it leaves margin for error. So I think there's lots of ways we can learn and improve the way we deliver health in this country.
Is one of the issues there the fact collaboration or a lack of collaboration? Because I know health particularly can be incredibly competitive between specialties and between hospitals and areas and jurisdictions and things like that, not sharing data, not sharing information. How important is collaboration to actually getting this going?
I think collaboration is key, but I do see examples of that across various sectors within health. I think you touched on the point there around jurisdictions. We know that COVID has exposed some significant issues around this country's federation, and the various jurisdictions and where health sits in those is part of the problem. Each state does have its own jurisdiction around health.
Okay, what about manufacturing? That's another big one. It's an industry which we were very strong in. It fell back, though, certainly in niche areas, we seem to bat pretty well.
We do, and what it means is that we're seeing automation playing a huge part in improving the output, the efficient manufacturing of product, innovation, developing new product, and the use of data to make sure that we make sound and informed decisions through things like AI and machine learning and robotics. So manufacturing is a really good example of how Australia actually punches pretty well above its weight.
The one that always interests me is agriculture, and I've talked about this on Fear and Greed previously. Friends of mine come from the country, and friends of mine, farmers or people on properties, are incredibly technically savvy.
Yes.
It's a really interesting space, this one, because a lot of them have embraced technology. What's missing?
Well, so what you said is actually spot on, Sean. Agritech is a great opportunity for Australia. Our technology is making a huge difference in everything from environment management to production, supply chain, getting fresher produce from the paddock to your plate more quickly and efficiently and indeed safely. We have an annual award program called the AIIA Awards, and this year's entries, and we get a couple of hundred a year, but around agritech, just the ability to detect bugs, viruses, environmental changes. We really do this really well. My concern, though, to answer your question, is sadly we're seeing many of the innovations making their way back to Australia as solutions that we then consume because our expertise is being sold off overseas or our IP. And we've got to find a way to actually own this, embrace it, and then sell to, not buy from.
So how do you do that?
Well, I think that comes down to the government needing to set some national strategies on how we're going to play in a way that our economy benefits, becomes independently sustainable and protects our priority industries from becoming globally uncompetitive, like agriculture. And I've seen examples of overseas where the whole paddock to plate is so much more efficient than our own. So the government needs, with the help of private enterprise, to create an environment for success through encouraging and supporting commercialisation, providing incentives for investors and innovators. You can change tax regimes, you can provide better access to resources and skills, and then opening up our external markets for our producers, which is a great example of the opportunity we're going to miss if we don't commercialise AI, for example, which is very heavy in agritech.
Stay with me, Ron. We'll be back in a minute. My guest today is Ron Gauci, CEO of the Australian Information Industry Association. Okay, so a lot of the incentives are probably seen through an R&D prism. Is this something that government should think about more discreetly so they can actually develop programs, be they subsidies, or otherwise it actually directly help these creators of this great technology, be they in agriculture or manufacturing or health or anywhere else in the country? Is it something that we need a little bit more focus or even a discreet section of the government to be thinking about?
Yeah, Sean, I think that's right. I think, again, it starts with having that national strategy and having a clear idea of the direction we want to go in. You mentioned research. We do spend a bit on research and early stage development, and it's nowhere near the levels of overseas. But where the AIIA has had an issue, and I'll use AI as an example, is in the commercialisation. We seem to do fairly well in the research, but we haven't really got a commercialisation strategy. AI alone in this country, according to all the reports, and there's quite a few of them out there, led by CSIRO, have said that the AI industry could be worth an additional $315 billion to Australia by 2030 if we commercialise. And we don't have a national commercialisation strategy. And we've been lobbying the government with some strategies on how we do that. But certainly I think that could become a missed opportunity because we're falling well behind global trends.
The government's thinking about it because recently a Senate committee laid out a plan for Australia to take a leadership role regulating the global digital economy. And part of that is a governance model that would allow companies to be run by an internet community instead of executives and directors. I'd never thought of that until I saw the report, to be honest. Is that the sort of thing you're talking about?
Yes, amongst other things, absolutely. That's a good example of, if we want to be innovative, we need to be innovative in the way we look at it.
Okay. What about skills? Do we have enough people? Because every time I think about this in every industry I look at, they're always calling out for people with digital skills. And we're not talking about extreme digital skills. We're talking about all digital skills right across the spectrum.
Correct, and that's a great point. And I'll start with the good news. And the good news is skills are on the top of the agenda of every state government and in fact, federal government. So I'm pleased to report that is a focus. In our industry alone, the technology industry employs, you said 750,000 in your introduction. That's at least that. It may well be over 800,000 people we don't know. But we have a shortage on top of that of some 250,000 across digitisation, AI, cybersecurity, etc. And the number is growing annually. So the skills shortage is a massive issue, but it's also a massive opportunity. We should be at around 1.5 million people employed in our industry within the next 3 to 5 years if we get this right. And I said the AIIA is working on several programs around the country with federal and state governments. There's something like 5,000-6,000 courses now that people can apply for to address this opportunity. And it creates opportunity for reskilling, cross-skilling, upskilling, call it what you like. And then there's the STEM programs to encourage young students. So contemplate this, Sean. If I'm looking for a career change as an experienced worker, or if I'm looking for a future career as a young student, a skill in the tech industry can allow me to work in any other industry that I like. And according to the Aon report that we partner with, a career in the tech industry can actually create amongst the highest paying roles in the country, higher than doctors and lawyers. And look at how many young technology entrepreneurs are now the most wealthy in the nation, if not in the world.
Yes, we need a whole of economy solution because what you're talking about literally impacts every sector.
Correct. Absolutely right.
Now, before you go, I mentioned your CV earlier. You were the CEO of Melbourne Storm. I didn't realise that. In a pretty tough time for the period. What was that like?
That's definitely a left field question. Let's perhaps if I extend the answer I've just given you to the other question around skills portability. So in my CV, it's fairly eclectic in the types of organisations I work for. I tend to go in, I think the reputation is Mr. Fixer, but I tend to go in and do a lot of transformational work. And for me, transformation isn't about cutting costs and saving businesses. It's about providing a future, so finding new revenue streams and growth opportunities. So it was those portable skills that allowed me to get the role at Melbourne Storm, and that is a good example. So here's a club that has had huge success on the field. Firstly, I should ask, who do you follow in the NRL?
Not the Melbourne Storm. I'm a Rabbitohs from way back. Rabbits man from way back.
A healthy rivalry, that's okay. And you can thank me for Greg Inglis if you like. But so here's a club that has had huge success on the field. The systems, processes and culture of that hard work ethic was led and driven by Craig Bellamy and Frank Panisi, who have driven that on-field success. In 2010, in the lead-up prior to the saga, News Corp, the owner of Storm, wanted to get out of the ownership of the club and were looking to sell. Then the salary cap scandal hit, wiping the value of the stock considerably. So more than that, what News was trying to sell was not actually commercially viable. What I learned when I got in there is that there were a few other problems, let's just put it that way, in terms of the off-field side of the business. And I found that when I arrived, not only was that despite the great success on the field, the business itself had many commercial issues off it. And on top of that, you then had the saga, which impacted morale, culture, and you can just imagine the feeling around the club at the time. So to answer your question, my job was to firstly understand all the issues that we needed to address, instill stability and confidence back into the club so we could keep our core people, leave but support the coach and the football department who clearly knew what they were doing, and then find innovative ways to not only fix the business but create a growth path to enable News to sell the business, which it did within the 3 years I was there. And in that time, we got all the commercial metrics to the best in the history up to that point of the club, which today is even more, it's so much stronger now. And I'm very proud of where the club is today compared to where it was in 2010 and the small part that I played in that.
But you've given me a playbook then for any company needing to turn itself around, really.
Well, hence the portable skills bit. Right. Yep. So I was able to use particularly not only my business skills, but my technology skills to create. We put in place systems to analyse data. So I operate off a model called organisational optimisation. What we were doing was looking at all the leverage. What if we filled every seat? What if we sold every ticket? What if we sold more merchandise? All of those dashboards and metrics we put in place so we could make informed decisions about where the levers were to actually grow the business.
Fantastic, Ron. Thank you for talking to Fear and Greed, and thank you for Greg Inglis.
Thanks, Sean. All the best.
That was Ron Gauci, CEO of the Australian Information Industry Association. This is the Fear and Greed Daily Interview. Join me every morning for the full Fear and Greed podcast with all the business news you need to know. I'm Sean Aylmer. Enjoy your day.